Assalamualaikum. This is Ariba Naveed, and today we will be going over a really cool, really short, very easy to make project that is dice rolling project that randomly generates a face onto the terminal. Let's just first see how it's printing the terminal, how it's working. Then we would get into the overall basics of how the logic works of the code. And then we will be moving on towards the Python implementation of yet we know, yes, we know the logic, but how do we implement it on to our Python language? So first of all, let's just view what our project is like. I will be writing Python 3, the our file name, which is dice.py. .py is because our file is in Python. So Python files always end with .py. So press enter to roll the dice. It's rolling dot 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 and then prints a random generated face onto the. Let's print it again. See what it prints. Oh, again 6. I hope it prints something else this time, or we could do it again. Oh, 2, yes. And then randomly generate it again, and it prints 5, yes. So now I do not want to print any further thing. So I'll just say no, and it says prints, thanks for playing. Let's get into the details of how it's implemented exactly. First of all, we have created a dictionary, and our dictionary is named Dice. And Dice contains all of our dice faces. So here's the one face, here's the second face, here's the third face, and so on, so forth. So basically, we will be getting into the detail of how a dictionary is implemented for those who do not know, and how we could access the keys in a dictionary. Then we print our welcome statement that welcome to the game, and then we continue the main game. So this while loop is our main coding block. So what happens is that it runs for while it's true. So while it's running, it keeps on asking the user that do you want to print a face onto the screen again, roll a dice again. If the user says yes, so it does printing it again. It says rolling and then it prints the face. But if the user says no, it immediately quits. So the yes and no, the if else statement is over here. So if you ask the user, do you want to roll it again? Yes or no? And if the user says yes, then we print it. Otherwise, we break the loop. We will be getting into the details of how the while loop works and how it's broken down as well. So let's get into what this portion of the code is doing and what this portion of the code is doing. So these are two separate portions. First portion just prints the rolling dot dot dot. Now you've seen on the terminal, if not particularly, let me do it again. We just cleared the terminal. Now we're going to roll the dice again and notice how it prints rolling and then there are pauses in the dots, pauses between the dots. The part of the code that deals with it is simply this part. And for this to be implemented, we basically import a library called time. So what the libraries are basically an additional set of implementation already done by the compiler. Could use these libraries to ease out the task for me. So instead of writing a whole lot of bunch of code of just getting a random number somehow, I could just simply import the Python library random and use it to generate a random number. So over here, we are importing time and using it in this block. What happens is that it first prints rolling, and then this n means that there is a pause. And now we're going to print the dot 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 with a few pauses. So the few pauses are created by this line time dot sleep 0.4. This basically creates a pause of, let's say, 0.4 seconds every now and then. Let's try to change it a bit. Let's say that I want something like 0.8 seconds delay, which is going to be a bit more visible. So delay is going to be a bit more visible. And this print statement simply prints the dots. So let's just do it with 0.8 seconds and enter. And notice how the dots are now moving a bit more slowly. So that there was a bit more delay in time. If I want to completely almost as if it's printing very fast, so let's convert it into 0.2 and see how it's run. So Python 3, enter, and see how it was printed so fastly. If I do not want this animation, if I do not want this fancy thing, I could just simply write a print statement. Let's say I want to write a print statement and it prints rolling onto the screen. And now this would just simply print rolling without any animation shown. So let's run it again. And I want to roll the dice, yes. And see how there was no animation. So if I want to add the animation, I just have to add a few lines, import my time library, and add these delays and pauses very effectively. So yes, let's move on towards randomly generating a number. So how does the computer know that I am going to randomly generate, let's say, when we were implementing the code, it randomly generated 5. How did it know? So this library of Python, the random, helps us randomly generate any number. And we define that I want my number to be between 1 to 6. So there's 1 and 6. Print statements are defined by my dictionary that I defined above, and I would be accessing them. So my roll dice had 3 number, and it says that please print the dice rolled, which would be dice 3. So it would just go into my dictionary and print dice 3. So this is my dice, this is the key 3, and this space would be printed. We would get into the detail of how exactly the dictionary works with the keys, but for now, just know that it randomly generates a number which is between 1 to 6 and then calls this dictionary's key, which then gives us this space, and we print it to a print statement. Sorry, this print statement. And yes, this is the simple if-else statement, which checks that if I want to continue with my code or not. And if no, then it breaks the loop. Otherwise, it continues. So this was like the broader perspective behind the working. Now let's go into the deeper understanding of how to implement it using Python. So for those of you who do not know what a dictionary is, let's create another file, help.py. Now, help.py is going to help us understand the concepts behind this working. So, help.py, we are going to create a random dictionary. And let's say I have a dictionary called names. Now, in order to describe, sorry, yes, in order to describe a dictionary, I just have to add curly brackets. And let's say I have names gets, I have two names in my dictionary, Ali and Amna. And now my dictionary is not defined correctly, particularly. That is because I do not have keys. A dictionary always has keys and the corresponding elements. So every key corresponds to an element. So let's say I have want to do it as the number one key is Ali, and this would be in inverted commas, and the number two key is Amna. And now I want to print Amna on my screen. How would I do that? I would simply say print Amna. So instead of saying Amna directly, I could use my dictionary and call the key 2 printing it. So let's say Python 3 help.py and it's going to print Amna. See? If I wanted to print Ali, I could just do this one because Ali is on our first key. And let's print it again. And see, it prints Ali. So this is how dictionary works. Dictionaries are just like boxes. So if I want to store my elements, I could store it in a dictionary, except that I would have to name elements. Like this is my first element, this is my second element, third, and fourth. So here in the dice.py, we were naming these elements. So the first element was our face with a single dot, and the second element was our face with double dots. That's how the dictionaries work. let's move forward to how the while loops work. So how do while loops work is they're very simple. Let's just remove this dictionary part and over here, create a while loop. While loops just keep on iterating something again and again until you are done with the amount of times you want it to be done. So for example, I have to run or print two, or I say Amna, 5 times on the terminal. And we could create a while loop. What while loop has, this brackets contains the statement. So it would keep on running and running and running until the statement is true. Once this statement into these brackets gets false, it automatically quits. So what we could do is, while count is less than or equal to 5, we could keep on printing Amna onto the screen. And I would do count plus plus over here, or count equals count plus 1. And yes, let's print it onto the screen. And it prints Amna 5 times onto the screen. That was like the same output we got from writing print literally. So we could just use a simple while loop. So if I wanted to print it quite literally, let's say 10 times. So this would have printed 10 times. Let's see. The Amna has printed 10 times now onto the terminal. So using a simple while loop, I could keep on repeating the same code of block, which was print Amna, several times until the while statement is true. Another way of doing the same thing is by using a for loop. Over here, we had a main while loop, which was true and which remained true. So it kept on running and running the code until and unless you printed a no onto the terminal that you do not want to continue to print the dice again. So then it quit. And how did it quit? It breaks the terminal. And yes, apart from that, we have another important thing, which is the for loop. So yes, we were using the for loop while printing the dots onto the screen. So over here, there were only 3 dots. What if I had to print 50 dots onto the screen? So rolling dot, 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 and then continue. So let's just do that. So instead of using a while loop, I could have used a for loop as well. In for loops, I don't need this count extra variable. I just need to write for I in range of, let's say, 50. Just keep on printing, Amna, and let's just give it like this or this. So what it would do is, let's just open a new terminal and persuade it again. See? It just keeps on printing Amna, 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 Amna again and again, again and again, again and again, 50 times onto the terminal. So that's how for loops work. While loops are for those loops that you do not know how much iterations you would want. So for, let's say, if I was working in this game, quite literally in the dice game, I did not know how many times the user would want to roll the dice. So if I start my Python file, dice.py, I could have ended right after the first rolling, right? No. Or I could have continued. So I do not know the number of iterations. That's why it's preferred to use a while loop. Whereas for the for loop is preferred for those loops in which you know the preferred amount, in which you know that it would only particularly run for this much amount of times. Like the number of dots you wanted to print, you already knew that you only need to print 3 dots. That's why you only used a for loop. I could have used. This was our brief introduction to how the rolling dice game works, and I hope it was really helpful for you guys. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.